This is a lesson to discuss the psychodynamic theories of offending behaviour. You've all been given this PowerPoint. We've also gone through this in class, so this should just be a refresher to help you with revision. So, the psychodynamic theory is based on the unconscious, the idea that everything happens in our unconscious. And if you can remember from the first year, we have 3 drives or motivations that drive personality. And they underpin our whole psyche. Remember that in this approach, Freud does not refer to the brain, but to the mind. And Freud believes that in the psychodynamic theory, the personality has 3 distinct components. These components are partially hidden in the unconscious, but also come into conscious thought. The id, the superego, and the ego. Make sure that you are able to differentiate between these. Now we move on to how this actually applies to crime in any way. Well, the first explanation comes from Alexander and Healy, who suggest that children need to progress from the pleasure principle to the reality principle. And this is done by having a stable home life. We know that Freud or psychodynamic theories do put a lot of focus on what happens in early years, and this is an example of that. So therefore, the belief is that the lack of the stability in the home leads children to become criminals. And again, it is children who do not make the transition from id to ego. So another explanation for this could be that the person, the criminal, has a weak superego, and this would make sense, as the superego is responsible for our morality, our sense of right and wrong. So here the suggestion is, if there is a lack of a loving parent figure, for example, if one parent is absent, this results in the person becoming selfish, uncaring, and eventually leading to criminal behaviour. The next one is the deviant superego. And the deviant superego focuses generally on the relationship between father and son. As you know, in the phallic stage, all boys go through the Oedipus conflict. And at this point, the boy models himself and identifies with his father. Now, if the father is a criminal or is engaged in any deviant or criminal behaviour, then the idea here is that the son will identify with that and will therefore imitate. The final one is a little harder. This is the over-harsh superego. And the idea of this is that people have a need to be punished. They feel guilty and therefore want to be punished. I'll just go back to that. So these people will unconsciously be guided to commit a crime, and it is in some way to satisfy their guilt. Look for this in examples where there are strict parent figures. These are usually people who feel guilty, are perhaps punished at home, and therefore are unconsciously guided to carry on doing this. These are the 3 main examples that you need to know. Now, there is some research to support the role of early experience on later life, and this comes from Ressler and Dietz and Warren. Have a look at this research and state why it supports the psychodynamic theory. Clearly, it suggests that childhood has a very significant impact on the future. This also links with Bowlby's theory, which is what we're moving on to next. So Bowlby, you should remember from the attachment theory. And Bowlby is very important when it comes to explaining criminal behaviour from his work looking at the maternal deprivation hypothesis and how this links into becoming an affectionless psychopath. Although Bowlby didn't coin the phrase psychopath, he definitely coined the phrase affectionless psychopath. So an affectionless psychopath is somebody who tends to not show a lot of remorse, who lacks a lot of empathy, generally an uncaring person. This is somebody who doesn't really show much affection or concern for others. Now, you remember from first year that we know how this develops, and this develops from a lack of maternal care. And this is children who are separated from their parents, where we would class a significant disruption to their care, which results in deprivation. The research to support this would be the 44 Thieves. You need to read up on this study. You will need this for the first paper as well to ensure that you understand this research. Make sure you can summarise the study. Think about the methodological issues with it, how the data was gathered, the problems with researcher bias, the problems with Bowlby carrying out the research himself, and consider the issues of lack of cause and effect. This brings to the end the session on the psychodynamic approach.